Okay, so we've talked a bit about exceeding hospital capacity and that would cause the death rate to go up significantly. So we need to know what is hospital capacity in New Jersey. So I'm going to base much of this off of one of the papers by a senior this year. The numbers are in flux. The number of ventilators we have changes every day. The hospital capacity changes every day. Hopefully we're expanding it to be ready if for a second wave, if one is to occur. So all of these numbers are numbers that are in flux. The data changes daily, and so our models would need to keep being updated to match any changes in the data. But let me share my iPad screen with you. Okay, so our ventilator count is a very important number, and it's an easy one to have a tally of. Okay, so we have about 3,000 ventilators in the state. Actually, it might be a little bit higher now, but I'm going to make an assumption that 1/3 of hospitalized patients need ventilators. Okay, so not everyone who goes into the hospital needs ventilators. Some might just need IVs, or other medicines that will help to keep them safe. So I'm going to assume then that we could support 9,000 COVID-19 patients. If we go over that number in the hospitals, the system could collapse. Okay, and that's bad. Not only does it mean people who have COVID-19 can't get a hospital bed, it might mean that somebody who has another kind of emergency. So if a neighbor were to have a heart attack, there might not be an ambulance available to pick them up. So we need to make sure that our hospitals aren't over capacity. We can do things to expand that capacity over the next few months. But for now, this is a rough estimate of our hospital capacity. And now we need everything in terms of proportions of the population. So if I look at the number 9,000 out of 9 million, we're off by 3 zeros, so that's 0.001, okay? So we could handle having 0.001, the proportion 0.001 of our population in hospitals, okay? But now remember, we assumed 5% need a hospital to recover. Okay, so that was from our previous video. So 95% of people would probably be just fine if they don't go to the hospital. In fact, a lot of them don't even know they're sick. So they wouldn't need a hospital at all. So let's say 5% need the hospital. Okay, so what do we do with our numbers? We can take that number 0.001 and divide it by 0.05, which is, by the way, the same as multiplying by 20. So we end up with 0.02, which is 2%, could be infected. Okay, and by this I mean could be infected without exceeding hospital capacity. Means we can properly take care of the sick population as long as it doesn't go over 2% or this number 0.02, all right? So this is an important number that we're going to put into our code. We're going to call this ITH, which is the threshold, threshold infection rate. I should say infection proportion. As long as we're under 2% of the population being infected at a given time, it means a much smaller percentage of those will then be in the hospital. But as long as less than 2% of the population is ever infected, we can stay, we can treat them properly, okay? The bad thing is if we go over this, instead of having 1% die. Okay. So as long as if I is below I threshold, 1% die. Okay. If I goes over I threshold, we determined that about 5 times as many, 5%, we'll assume everyone who didn't go to the hospital would die. Okay. So we're assuming people who go to the hospital need the treatment that they're going to get. They're not likely to recover if they don't get proper treatment. And there's also the factor that people who need to go to the hospital for other reasons might not be able to get treatment. So we may see a significant increase in mortality should we go over 2% of the population being sick.